Today, I'm going to talk about how we have created an R Centre of Excellence at Pfizer, and why other people might want to think about doing something similar. So the first question that comes up when I talk about using R at Pfizer is, well, how many people use R? And to be honest, I don't know. What I do know is that kind of almost 2 years ago, I pulled the kind of Pfizer central location for software to find out how many people had downloaded any version of R. And at that time, it was over 1,500 people had downloaded R. I suspect it's probably more than that by now. But you can see that then the number of people who have R in some shape or form is really substantial. Okay, the next question, how are they using R? Well, I have no idea. If I don't know exactly how many people install R, I have even less idea about how they're using R. I know how some of the people in my kind of local global biometrics group, I know how they're using R. I know how a lot of people in clinical pharmacology are using R, but there's so many people out there. There's no way that I can kind of legitimately know what they're doing with R day to day. What I do know is that we have lots of real experts in R. So we have folks who really know their way around R. Max Kuhn, who now works for POSIT and is the kind of lead instigator for tidy models. Max used to work at Pfizer. So a while back, I knew Max and used to talk to him about R stuff. Some of the stuff he was doing back then was real cutting edge stuff. And I confessed that I really wasn't aware of what he was doing, or the fact that he had a shiny server tucked under his desk. But the other thing that I know about our users at Pfizer is that there's a lot of beginners. So there's people who have downloaded R and maybe downloaded R Studio IDE, but that's about all that I know about them. And they are just dipping their toe into the world of R. Now, across the 80,000 people that work at Pfizer, I know that there will be experts kind of dotted within the groups that I know, but there are also experts out there globally, literally globally. So from Japan, China, India, Europe, across to the North Americas and South Americas, there are people out there doing stuff with R, and there may be N of one in their little part of the organization. So there was a guy I talked to who worked in an analytics team in Costa Rica. He was one of the only people in his team that used R. He knew his way around R very effectively, but then he was trying to explain to his line manager, how could Shiny or POSIT Connect help them, instead of things like Power BI or Data IQ or some other tool. Right. So there are all these experts dotted throughout the world in different business groups. And basically, I would love to corral them, get them together and, ask them how they do what they're doing. The other truth is that in that size of number of users, the chances are super high that we will wind up solving the same problems over and over and over and over. Right. It's just inevitable. How can someone who sits in Chennai know how to use R effectively and set up things and access systems like SharePoint, when someone in Connecticut is trying to do exactly that same thing? Unless we bring these people together, we've got no way of knowing exactly how to solve that kind of problem and prevent wheel spin and reinventing things. And how do you solve problems where parts of the organizations have no expert? Right. So I want to kind of offer that expertise and help them to solve their problems when maybe they don't have an expert to hand. So that's that's really the motivation behind why we set up this Centre of Excellence. Right. We're trying to coalesce a community, quite a big community, but it's a little bit like herding cats, because some people want to be part of a community, other people aren't terribly interested. But what we saw is that there was power in having that community to be able to share our experiences and tips and tricks, to ask for help, right? So if, as I say, if I'm sitting in one part of the world and I've got a problem, I could ask someone sitting in a completely different part of the world, completely different part of the organization, and maybe they've got the answer to my question. We want to try and coordinate efforts across business lines. You can imagine that if you had 15 different business lines all having discussions with POSIT about getting their professional products, might be good for POSIT, not so good for Pfizer, because we would be negotiating contracts 15 times, right? So if we can coordinate efforts with the digital organization and the IT organization as well, we can leverage our scale that we have today. And actually, leveraging scale is something that I was talking about with the NHSR folks and Chris Bealey, because if you are one of a group of 5 people that use a tool, and you go to your manager and say, "Hey, I would like to get a new license for this tool," chances are that you'll get a kind of ho-hum, don't know, we'll look at the budget kind of answer. Similarly, if you go to your IT organization and say, "Hey, could you stand me up a server with this version of R on it?" Yeah, well, if you're only 1 out of 5, then you might not get a decent answer to that question. But if suddenly you've got a group of 500 people or 1,500 people, and you say, all of these R users globally want to have this version of R on a server, that's when digital can listen to you and go, "Oh, right, so it's 1,500 people you're looking for. Cool. Let's get that done for you." So leveraging scale is a really important part of what we're talking about here, because we have the numbers to kind of then make a good business case for why some of these things should happen. We want to try to provide input to strategy. Again, coming back to that thing of there are a number of us now, and so if we want to have a strategy around how do we design shiny apps and build them for production, a center of excellence can think about that and come up with some guidance that we then can roll out to the organization. I've talked about working with IT groups, but that's a big part of what we're doing and the benefit of having that single center of excellence. So we represent Pfizer externally, and we also represent our user community internally. So again, we can take part in things like Fuse, like R in Pharma or open source in Pharma. We can take part in POSIT conferences, ERL conference, things like our user groups like we're doing today, and just represent what we're doing and represent Pfizer at these meetings. We can also identify training needs. So if we can rustle up 30 people who want to know about how to use pins and RStudio Connect, then we can ask POSIT for help to get training on that. And also we can prepare material for internal use. So rather than a group in China coming up with a shiny training module and a group in America coming up with a shiny training module, we can try and harmonize that. And I used to joke about the fact that there's only one R in Pfizer. That's not quite true. There's many, many different flavors of R in Pfizer, but I want to try and get to that notion of one kind of community or at least one approach to R at Pfizer. Now, so we are a community of our center of excellence structure is layered, right? And yes, I came up with the hex sticker and the name of this group long before I retrofitted this acronym to it. So we are Scientific Workflows and Analytic Tools, or the SWAT team. And I hope that we kind of do that SWAT thing of we come in and we help solve tricky problems. We provide that technical input for the experts. We are kind of the sounding board for the experts in the organization. We provide training and help for beginners. And the way that I've described this is a bit like we build Lego pieces, right? So when you buy Lego, you buy a model of something, it has a load of instructions, and you get bags with Lego pieces in them. Now, each time that you think of those Lego pieces, someone has had to think about what's this Lego piece for, or how do we compose things with this kind of Lego piece? And the idea is that those Lego pieces are reusable, right? So across all of the Lego models, you might see the same pieces over and over and over, right? And so what we're in the SWAT team, we're trying to build those Lego pieces or design those Lego pieces. We also build with those Lego bits, And so you might describe us as Lego master builders, but we also then can give those Lego pieces plus instructions to someone else for them to go and build whatever it is they want to build, right? Building the Lego pieces, it involves design thinking, right? So instead of just hacking something out, here it is, go use that. We want to say, right, here are some composable bits that you can pick up and you can build what you need with them, right? We need to think carefully about, well, what kinds of things could we do with this before we roll it out? And we need to think carefully before we just, hack together another piece of Lego, right? So we're trying to avoid what's called technical debt. And if you've not heard that term before, it's where you go fast in order to get something done, and you don't really care about how tidy or messy it is, right? Just doing stuff. Technical debt then accumulates because later on, 6 months, a year later, you look back at what you've done and you think, oh, crikey, that was a mess. I know it got today's job done, but actually I need to maintain this in the longer term. And it's a bit messy. And I'm, if I was to start all over again, I would do it in a much neater way. So that's what we call technical debt, is that kind of, you're pushing things down the line and you're saying, I'll deal with the problems later because I need to get today's work done. The other thing about the SWAT team is that I'm trying to work out in the open. So rather than have people say, well, I have no idea what this team are doing day to day, I want to have our project plan so that people know what we're working on, what's coming next. If someone shows up at our door and says, hey, I'd really like your help to do this, if I say, well, we're really busy this week, but we'll come to you next week, I want them to be able to look at what we're actually working on this week and go, yep, fair dues. I can see that you're really busy this week. And that transparency is really important to me. The next part of the Center of Excellence is the core team. So these are really our key stakeholders. They tend to be managers within the different business lines. Their job is to try and help us prioritize. They're there to kind of identify opportunities where we can provide consultancy. So if they know someone in their business line has a problem and could use our help, they can whistle us up and we'll come and speak to that person. We're also trying to bridge between the Center of Excellence and those business lines. So if there are people within that business line who are experts, this core team can go, well, have you spoken to that person about what they do? Because I think you might find it interesting. These people also lead the way on the various initiatives that we have. So we're talking about influencing the internal environment, the external environment, as I've talked about, education and training, advances in R, which is like, what's the bleeding edge of what's coming in R? What are the new packages? What are the new functions? What should we be aware of? And also they're kind of taking the lead on adapting our processes. In a massive organization like Pfizer, you can imagine that we have processes for bloody everything, right? And so what we're trying to do then is bring in R and Python and other tools and kind of replacing SAS. And so lots of people who've been SAS centric for years suddenly, gasp and they go, oh my goodness, can we even use these tools? So we need to think about how do we square that up and talk those people down off the ledge and make sure that they are happy with that the quality level of what we're doing is high. Now, as I say, that the core team then are kind of leading each of these initiatives and making sure that we're making progress. One of the things that we found was that, in the last year since we initiated this Center of Excellence, we've made much, much more progress in that past year, where we've got the SWAT team who are focused on driving, individual consults and stuff forward, and this core team, because it's like it stopped being a hobby for many people. So they've got things in their annual goals that say we need to, influence the internal environment. And if they achieve that tick, it's then recognized that this effort is actually worth doing. So, I think that one of the big messages from this is getting it recognized to be a genuine need within the organization, then resourcing it and going properly at it rather than it just being something that you tack on, on a Friday or, on some day of the week when you're not stowed out with lots of other jobs to do in the week, right? Because then if it's a hobby, there will always be something that takes higher priority. And if you don't have it in your goals, then it's easy to forget it and go, oh, well, I'm not measured on, building community, so I'll just not bother. Okay. So that was another of the key lessons learned over the last year. So then after the core team comes the community at large, right? So we now have over 1,000 people on the RN Pfizer team site. Not all of those people are active, but it's been quite impressive to break the 1,000 people barrier. And again, that has ramped up steadily over the last year. The interactions we have through that are, worthwhile. They're important. We can share our best practice. People can ask questions, but the key thing is that they can also answer questions. And this really is it's a kind of marker or a metric for how well the community is going. I'd say that, if your community is helping to answer each other's questions, then it's sustainable. Right? If everything comes through Mike, so only Mike knows the answer, I must ask Mike, then that's not going to last very long, okay? Because I'll burn out or I'll get bored of answering the same old questions again and again. But if the community are starting to ask and get answers within that community, then you're on a winner. And here's an example of what I'm talking about. So there was a colleague in the stats programming group in California who asked if anyone knew how to connect R to Oracle clinical databases using DBI or R Oracle. Someone in Dublin from a completely different part of the organization, a different part of Pfizer, responded and said, yep, I use RJDBC. Now, the mechanics, the specifics of what that answer was aren't really of interest here. But I'm saying that someone in Dublin in a completely unrelated part of the organization answered someone else from California's question, and this is a great example of how joining up these people who have expertise across, globally and across the organization and across different business lines can really pay dividends. Now, I realize now this film is really old. Kevin Costner film Field of Dreams, in which he builds a baseball park in his back garden. And if you've seen the film, actually, it's a real thing. Someone actually did do this. And the tagline for the film is, if you build it, they will come, right? In terms of community, in terms of marketing what we do in terms of building community, if you don't tell anyone that it's there, they won't come, right? I think that generally speaking, data scientists, I'm painting with broad brushstrokes here, but we are geeks, right? So if we develop something really cool, we'll tell other geeks and they'll go, that's really cool. What we don't tend to do then is just to tell, the world at large and market what we've done, and market it in a way that, isn't just us pointing at it and going, hey, look at that. You'll recognize that that's a neat thing. So we need to be able to market and sell and shout about the good work that we're doing. And it feels really uncomfortable sometimes, right? But it's a necessary thing to then demonstrate value outside of that geeky community that we tend to talk to. The other thing is, if you've not got the engagement of your boss and that the boss's boss, then it's going to be a real uphill struggle. So I tried to do this for years. I tried to kind of get people together and get them to kind of, share what we know about R amongst that group. And it was really, really hard because it didn't have the endorsement. We didn't have the dedicated resource to do it. And it wasn't until we kind of had buy-in and sponsorship from up the management line that we really started to get traction. Okay, so don't just sell it to the kind of other geeks in the room, but sell it upwards to your managers so that, again, you're showing the return on investment and showing why it's this community that you're building is returning on the time and effort spent not doing it. The other thing is that I found a key person. So I found a mentor. Doug Robinson joined Pfizer from Novartis in September 2021. And basically on day 2 of him arriving, I pinned him to the wall and said, tell me how I do this. Because he had set up and led a very similar group at Novartis. And so I kind of bounced ideas off Doug. We agreed and aligned on so many things. And it was great to have him kind of come in, and he wasn't brought in to do this job. He was brought in to do a different job. But because I knew that he had done that at Novartis, and because I had seen him present at the Pharma conference in 2021, I knew that he was a good guy and worth, pumping for all the information that I possibly could get. So find your mentor, find the people who've done it before, find people who you respect and can give you that input and advice, and be able to bounce ideas off and go, look, am I crazy thinking that this will ever work? And then kind of use that person to kind of sanity check your ideas. And as I say, he was very familiar with selling this concept up the management line. And so he could say, look, these are the key people that you need to talk to. You need to keep them in the loop, and you need to keep them happy with what you're doing. The other thing is about building and fostering relationships inside and outside your organization. So sessions like this in use our groups, but also things like data science hangouts, our ladies, London R, build your community both inside and outside that organization, so that you then have a network of people that you can tap into. And lastly, have a clear vision. So, if you're going to start building a center of excellence or something like that, or if you want to just build a community, have a clear vision of what it is you're trying to achieve. Have a clear plan on how you're going to get there. So what you're going to do in 3 months, what you're going to do in 6 months, what do you expect to achieve in a year? I think it's not quite enough just to sit down and go, do you know what, I'll label this a community, and if 3 people show up, that'll be great, right? You need to have that plan of how you're going to build the community and take it forward. And then find friendly individuals. So as Jeremy has done, reach out to your network and go, hey, can you come and talk to us about this thing that you're doing, because it sounds really interesting. Or in my case, just come and talk, because I'll talk anywhere at any time. And then once you have your plan, communicate that effectively to stakeholders and make sure that they know what that vision is and how you intend to get there. And with that, as I've said, this is the end of our year 1 of the Center of Excellence. I want to thank these people here who have contributed, and not least to the SWAT team, who are a bunch of arch geeks, but lovely people too. So thanks very much.